Battle for Ukraine's survival has just entered its most dangerous phase, and this time it's not just Russia that Kyiv has to worry about. The United States, once Ukraine's strongest ally, has slammed the brakes on military aid and intelligence sharing. Donald Trump says he finds it easier to work with Russia than Ukraine. And as the EU scrambles to fill the void, a historic shift in global power is unfolding. But here's the real question. Is this the moment Europe finally breaks free from American military dominance? Or is Ukraine about to become the ultimate casualty of Trump's foreign policy gamble? Let's break it all down. For years, Ukraine's survival depended on unwavering US support. But that era is over. With Trump back in the White House, Ukraine is losing its most powerful backer, and Vladimir Putin isn't wasting a second. Within days of the US halting military aid, Russia launched a massive missile and drone attack on Ukraine's energy grid, crippling key infrastructure across Odessa and Poltava. The message was clear. Without America, Ukraine is vulnerable. And Trump? He didn't just acknowledge Putin's aggression, he justified it. Speaking from the Oval Office, Trump dismissed concerns, saying, "I actually think he is doing what anybody else would do." According to Trump, Putin simply wants to end the war, and is probably being more generous than he has to be. Meanwhile, Ukraine is desperately trying to repair its fractured relationship with Washington. After a disastrous meeting with Trump, where he warned Zelensky he was gambling with World War III, Ukrainian officials are now heading to Saudi Arabia for crisis talks with US diplomats. Their mission? Convince Trump that Ukraine is still worth backing. But let's be real, Trump isn't buying it. Not only has he halted military shipments, but his administration has cut off Ukraine's access to real-time US intelligence. American satellite imagery, once crucial for tracking Russian troop movements, is now locked away. Ukrainian drones, which relied on US data, have already become 10 to 15% less accurate. And here's the next problem. Ukraine's own military is running on empty. With US arms shipments frozen, Ukrainian commanders are warning of severe ammunition shortages. The front lines in the Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia regions are struggling to hold, and Kyiv's forces are being forced into a defensive posture for the first time in months. Ukrainian artillery units are firing fewer shells per day, and some reports suggest they are now outgunned 5-1 in key battle zones. To make matters worse, Russia has dramatically ramped up arms production. With factories running around the clock and deepening ties with Iran and China, the Kremlin has more firepower than ever. Ukrainian officials are now begging the EU to step in and provide critical munitions before it's too late. But while Ukraine scrambles, the European Union is waking up. For decades, Europe relied on Washington for security. Now, with Trump pulling back, EU leaders are being forced to rethink everything. At an emergency summit in Brussels, the EU unveiled plans for a historic military buildup, pouring billions into defense spending. And Moscow has noticed. The Kremlin's response? A warning that Russia may have to respond if the EU continues its militarization. In other words, Europe is now seen as an independent military force, not just America's junior partner. So here's the big picture. The US is stepping back. Russia is stepping up. And Europe is finally stepping into a role it has avoided for decades. But for Ukraine, this shift might come too late. Zelensky is now pushing for an emergency ceasefire, calling for a halt to long-range missile strikes and aerial bombings. This isn't a show of strength. It's a sign that Kyiv knows it may not survive without a deal. Meanwhile, Trump's position keeps shifting. In one breath, he brags about his relationship with Putin, calling the Russia investigations a hoax. In the next, he threatens massive tariffs and sanctions on Russia, but only if they refuse to negotiate peace. It's classic Trump. Maximum unpredictability. But one thing is clear. Ukraine is no longer America's problem. The question is, will Europe step up fast enough to keep Kyiv in the fight? Or has Trump just handed Putin his biggest victory yet? Let me know what you think in the comments. Will Europe's military expansion change the balance of power? Or is Ukraine